What if the secret to staying young was already circulating inside your own veins? A growing cohort of ultra-wealthy individuals, Silicon Valley founders, biotech billionaires, are storing their own blood at peak health, planning to reinfuse it decades later when aging accelerates. Autologous blood banking means storing your own blood for your own future use. Not a hospital procedure for surgery prep. This is a proactive, elective longevity strategy. It runs tens of thousands of dollars per year. The longevity industry crossed $1 billion in investment in 2022. Companies like Juvenescence and the Hevolution Foundation are betting that biological aging isn't inevitable. It's a solvable engineering problem. Brian Johnson sold Braintree to PayPal for $800 million in 2013. He now spends roughly $2 million a year on his body through Project Blueprint, tracking over 200 biomarkers every month. In 2023, Johnson made headlines by exchanging blood plasma with his teenage son Talmage and his elderly father Richard. A 3-generation transfusion experiment that split the scientific community and captivated the internet. Plasma is the liquid portion of blood, roughly 55% of its volume, carrying proteins, hormones, clotting factors, and signaling molecules. Aging researchers believe plasma composition shifts dramatically after 40, triggering systemic decline. The modern obsession with young blood traces directly to parabiosis experiments. In 2005, UC Berkeley researchers, Irina and Michael Conboy, surgically joined the circulatory systems of old and young mice, and the old mice showed measurable muscle and liver tissue rejuvenation. One protein, GDF11, became the early celebrity of this field. A 2014 Harvard study led by Amy Wagers found that injecting GDF11 into old mice appeared to reverse cardiac aging and improve muscle regeneration. Then it got harder. A 2015 Novartis-funded study attempted to replicate Wagers' GDF11 results and failed. Researchers found GDF11 actually increases with age in humans, the opposite of what the rejuvenation hypothesis required. Lead replication author David Glass called the original claims overstated in a direct published rebuttal. The field pivoted. By 2020, Stanford's Tony Whisk-Correa proposed the dilution hypothesis. Aging plasma doesn't simply lack youth proteins, it actively accumulates harmful inhibitory factors. Young blood works by diluting the damage, not adding magic ingredients. His team identified over 1,000 plasma proteins that shift with age, publishing in Nature Medicine. Alkahest, spun out of Whisk-Correa's Stanford lab, identified specific plasma protein fractions and ran clinical trials on Alzheimer's patients using a product called GRF6019, reporting cognitive stabilization in a 2019 Phase 2 trial. In February 2019, the FDA issued an explicit safety warning against paying for young blood infusions, calling the practice unproven and potentially dangerous. Commissioner Scott Gottlieb stated there was no clinical evidence supporting it for healthy people. That warning targeted companies like Ambrosia Health, which had been charging $8,000 per liter of young donor plasma and enrolling paying customers as research subjects. The business collapsed within days of the FDA's statement. Here's the counterintuitive twist. Banking your own blood sidesteps the donor plasma controversy entirely. You're not buying someone else's youth. You're preserving your own biological snapshot before aging degrades it. Crucially, autologous transfusion carries none of the immune rejection or disease transmission risks that made donor plasma so legally fraught. Companies like Forever Labs, founded in 2015, backed by Y Combinator, and Celvera now offer cryogenic autologous blood and stem cell banking. Clients bank at 30 or 40, then plan to reinfuse their own younger plasma or stem cells at 60 or 70, betting on medical protocols that don't yet exist. What gets stored isn't whole blood. Technicians separate and freeze plasma fractions, peripheral blood mononuclear cells, the immune and stem cells, and increasingly, exosomes, tiny signaling vesicles that regulate cellular aging at the molecular level. Timing matters because of the epigenetic clock. Steve Horvath's 2013 methylation clock showed that biological age, measured by chemical tags on your DNA, diverges from chronological age starting in your mid-30s, then accelerates after 50. Banking at 30 captures cells before significant epigenetic drift accumulates. A 2022 paper in Nature Aging confirmed that plasma protein composition shifts most dramatically between ages 34 and 60, making early 30s the optimal biological snapshot window. Here's the payoff. Researchers increasingly believe the mechanism isn't about adding youth proteins at all. The real target is inflammaging, the chronic low-grade inflammation that accumulates in aged plasma and silently degrades every organ system simultaneously. Inflammaging, a term coined by Claudio Franceschi in 2000, is driven by rising levels of interleukin-6, TNF-alpha, and C-reactive protein in aged plasma. These aren't just markers of disease, they actively accelerate cellular senescence throughout the body. Wiscori's team didn't stop at theory. A 2022 clinical study published in Aging performed therapeutic plasma exchange on human participants and measured direct reductions in circulating interleukin-6 and other inflammaging markers. The first controlled human data showing the dilution effect is real, not just a mouse phenomenon. But the controversy isn't only scientific. Bioethicist Françoise Baylis at Dalhousie University argues that extreme longevity technologies create a two-tier humanity, those who can afford to slow aging and those who can't, deepening existing health inequities by decades. There's also a research dollar problem. When private capital chases elite longevity interventions, it competes with funding for diseases carrying massive documented death tolls. The WHO estimates tuberculosis alone killed 1.3 million people in 2022. A disease with effective treatments that remain chronically underfunded relative to their potential impact. Defenders of longevity research make the trickle-down argument. Metformin, rapamycin, and senolytics, drugs now running through elite biohacking protocols, began as treatments for diabetes, organ rejection, and cancer before reaching broader populations. Metformin, derived from French lilac plant research in the 1920s, now costs under $10 a month as a generic. The autologous blood banking trend is a preview of something bigger, a shift from population-level medicine to ethology, where your own past self becomes a therapeutic resource. Forever Labs has already demonstrated this model works logistically. They've banked stem cells from over 10,000 clients since 2015, stored at -190 degrees Celsius indefinitely. For the 99% not banking plasma, the same inflammaging mechanisms are addressable through evidence-backed interventions. Sustained aerobic exercise reduces circulating IL-6, quality sleep lowers CRP, and caloric restriction mimetics like metformin are in active trials. The TAME trial, targeting aging with metformin, launched by Nir Barzilai at Albert Einstein College of Medicine in 2023, is the first FDA-approved clinical trial treating aging itself as a disease. It's enrolling 3,000 participants across 14 sites. Back to Brian Johnson. His 2023 published data showed his biological age, tested at approximately 41, on multiple epigenetic clocks, despite being 46 chronologically, a 5-year reversal. Critics note the absence of a randomized control makes causation impossible to confirm. The honest scientific answer to whether autologous reinfusion works is, we don't know yet. No long-term randomized human trial has been completed. The billionaires banking blood today are, by definition, running an uncontrolled experiment on themselves. Here's the detail that reframes everything. Irina Conboy, the same UC Berkeley researcher whose 2005 parabiosis work launched this entire field, published a 2022 study showing that simple saline dilution of aged blood produced rejuvenation effects comparable to young blood transfusion. The active ingredient may not be youth at all. It may just be less of the old. You don't need $2 million to engage with this science. Ask your doctor for a baseline inflammaging panel. CRP, IL-6, and a complete metabolic panel cost under $200, and are covered by many insurers. If you're between 35 and 79, the TAME trial is actively enrolling. That's the closest accessible equivalent to what Johnson is doing, and it costs nothing to participate.